hopelessness and helplessness. The government gives them the drugs, builds bigger prisons, passes a 3-strike law, and then wants us to sing God Bless America. No, 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 not God Bless America. God damn America. That's in the Bible for killing innocent people. God damn America for treating us citizens as less than human. God damn America as long as she tries to act like she is God and she is supreme.
Kingdom, here we come.
Did that work? Did it make you feel better?
Yeah, I feel better now.
That was Chris Pratt as Mario.
Are we recording?
Yeah, we're recording. This is it. This is what the whole show is like.
Okay, let's talk about Chris Pratt as Mario. I do not like that they cast a Christian as Mario. It does track. He is Italian. He's probably Catholic. Mm-hmm. He probably celebrates Pokrov. Mm-hmm. But I don't like Chris Pratt because, in my opinion, right, you get these fucking guys. They start off as like a goofball, like a lovable comedic relief on like Parks and Recreation, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody loves Mouse Rat.
Yeah, I like Mouse Rat.
Oh, the band, yes.
Next thing you know, bam, 0 Dark 30, right? Suddenly he's a good old boy. He's dropping fucking bombs on brown people and shit. But he's likable, and he's doing 0 Dark 30, doing the Iraq War palatable. And then you go, what was that switcheroo all about? And you find out he's like, being funded by mega church people and shit. Mm. He's from that world. He's a Christian freak.
I'm interjecting to say I don't see how this relates to Mario. Continue.
I just don't like that they made this guy Mario.
Yeah, Chris Pratt's a real bastard, but the main thing is I don't like Jack Black as Bowser either. Oh, it's not even that he's doing a bad job. It's just Bowser shouldn't talk so much.
Jack Black is Bowser?
Yeah, he shows up and he's like, don't make me burn the whole place down.
I don't rock your fucking socks off.
I'm gonna butt stomp.
It's weird that he talks at all. I think he didn't speak English.
Bowser, it's a beast.
Here's a way that they could have properly done this wonderful cartoon program is you have Bowser go and then subtitles pop up like it's an intelligent French film.
Yeah.
And I also want that for Mario. I want Mario to speak some foreign language. Mario just speaks German for some reason.
Well, speaking of
not even Italian.
I am curious. Do we know how Mario feels about the March on Rome?
I don't know how Mario feels about much of anything.
Very controversial views on the chosen people, if you catch my drift.
Yeah.
I mean, you go to the Olympics 3 times, you stop seeing yourself as one of, normal people. You think you're better than other people. And I kind of think that's all gone to his head.
You said Mario's been to the Olympics 3 times?
Yeah, with Sonic.
Huh?
Are you
really?
Mario and Sonic have gone to the Olympics, and they've competed. And at what event would you guess they compete in?
Ring jumping?
All of them. They do all of the whole Olympics by themselves with their friends.
Is that a game I don't know about?
Yes, it's Mario and Sonic go to the Olympics, and there's a bunch of them.
That's that could cause universal chaos, right? Because they're from 2 different worlds.
Yeah, there's national tensions in a way. It's kind of reminiscent of the Iran conflict, with all the Jewish kidnappees or whatever.
When the Mario Olympics come to a city, they displace all of the people in the tents into tent cities and massively devastate the entirety of Rio de Janeiro or whatever.
They destroy the hedgehog population.
Yeah, they move all the Pikmin around.
Yeah,
it's neither here nor there. But the point is, this movie is an abomination, and I will absolutely end up seeing it and squeezing content out of it because this is what I do with my life. These are the choices I've made.
How many people do you think are going to take mushrooms and go watch it? Because that occurred to me just now, and I got really excited.
Percentage-wise?
Yeah.
1%? Just dirtbags and cities, probably?
I want to do that. I'm going to do it.
I've never had a good mushroom experience.
I love
because they make my tummy upset.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, well, I'm tripping, but I feel ill.
Well, now you know how Mario feels all the time.
Yeah, that's why he gets so big.
His job's not easy.
You know his last name is Mario?
I do know that. I know, before you ask me any question about Mario, I know about it.
Fine.
Welcome to the show. It's Pod Day America for another week.
Hello!
Wahoo! The number one Mario podcast!
Looking at Anders right now, watching him try to figure out how to do this.
Well, I'm thinking about you do the Chris Pratt, which is like...
Wahoo!
What? Yeah, it's just like a high-pitched voice.
I already closed the window. I want to play it again. I should have that sound isolated.
Someone leaked the French version, and in the French version, he sounds like Mario. So it's weird that they would make this specific decision for the English one, for him not to sound like the Mario that we all know and love.
In order to sell a movie, you need to attach a star, which will inherently damage the product you are creating every time. Because they had to shoehorn Chris Pratt into goddamn Mario to sell it.
Sucks.
And then they're like, Chris Pratt, we're not going to ask you to do voices. That would be stupid. Just kind of talk like you talk.
How mad is the guy, though? You know the guy who does the Mario voice, right? He has his own fucking
Mario
YouTube channel and shit.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, he's got a great story about how they plucked him out of obscurity, and he just sort of went home and he did research, and he was like, what do Italian people sound like? And then he came up with this fucking thing.
When I was growing up, my teachers said I would never be Mario. Look at me now. Footage of Mario Sunshine.
This would have been in the 90s, because Mario goes back to the 80s, but he didn't really speak until N64, right?
Something like that, yeah.
That's right, Anders.
Maybe the cartoons or something.
That's right, Anders.
But it's been this one guy. So for them to make this movie without him is, I don't know, it's kind of insulting.
Yeah.
It's very rude.
Well, did you hear who's going to play Georgia or Peach?
Who?
Georgia Maloney. I stepped
true?
on that. God damn.
Georgia Peach played by Georgia Maloney.
Right, Georgia Peach.
Georgia Peach.
There you go.
Is she supposed to be Italian?
Now, I realize we've talked about this woman extensively. Her name is not Georgia, is it?
Yes, it is.
What?
I've known. Georgia. There's a whole country in Eastern Europe.
I
called
know
Georgia.
that.
And it's an Italian name. I've known a Georgia.
Okay.
Who's Italian.
You've known
I just
a
felt like
Georgia.
we were calling her a different name last week.
It's like Georgia.
Okay, all right. I don't want to talk about this woman ever again. We're interviewing somebody running for Congress today, so we have a lot of good stuff to get into. Number one, bring your nugs to the White House, because it's time to spark one with dank President Joe Biden.
I saw this story break in real time on Twitter yesterday as I was staring at my phone at some dumb thing, and
We're very important press people. We get
It was
cutting
leaked.
updates.
It was leaked to us. All weed-related news.
I hate to always be like a sour puss about shit like this, but as soon as it happened, I was just like, okay, we've all been through this. Don't get too excited. The other shoe is going to drop. I don't know how, but it will. They walked back a bunch of the fucking student loan shit. We all got excited over that, and then it turns out
They're also doing. Biden is mandating that they redo Mad Men with Chris Pratt.
they're also he put Chris Pratt in all the bad movies.
I don't think about you at all.
But I think it's been 24 hours almost, and it's people have figured it out already. Okay, it's really simple. The specific language they used is that anyone arrested for possession in a federal way, as a federal offense,
Right. At national parks in certain areas of Washington, D.C.
yeah, is going to be what do you call it? Pardoned.
Their sentence commuted, their crimes recognized and absolved by the state.
So there's two things about that, right? One is that no one is arrested federally. Everyone is arrested, especially for weed.
They're arrested by state.
You're arrested at the local and state level.
And a lot of times with other charges.
And that's the other thing is that by design, the way the drug war works is when you get arrested for having some weed in your pocket, they throw the whole fucking book at you because they want something to stick. So they charge you purposely with 20 fucking things every time you get nabbed for having a fucking dime bag in your pocket or whatever. Well, first and foremost, if you have enough of any drug. It's just automatically you're a drug czar or whatever the fuck. You're intending to distribute.
Let's write this down. Assault of a bag.
Yeah.
Putting drugs in it.
So no one gets charged specifically with possession. So just those two things right off the bat render this like completely feckless, but everyone got really excited. So
it's exciting when he does things by executive order, is what it is, because no one has any faith in like Congress and Senate to just pass a bill to create progress, but the executive office is so bloated and juiced up with power from the Obama administration and Bush administration that like there is a lingering hope that maybe we can sneak through good things by just, maybe it's the midterms, maybe he'll give us a good thing. The way that this happened was very funny because we're pardoning people with marijuana offenses, federal marijuana offenses, and the wording on it the first time I saw it was there may be as few as 500 of them, and then there was an update to the article. It turns out there are 0 people currently with just federal marijuana charges. We're officially pardoning 0 people.
I mean, yeah.
I knew something was up when because he said this will help thousands of people, and I was like thinking in my head everything I've ever read about the drug war. I was like, should it be like tens of thousands or like hundreds of thousands?
Wait.
It's like a lot of people. So even if it was just like a few thousand, that's still not very much.
This wasn't his idea, too.
Yeah.
Clearly, look, I mean...
This man hates drugs.
Right.
He's got like a Jackie Chan versus his son idea of marijuana. He's ready to start shooting offenders in the streets.
Yeah. I mean, he, is architect of the crime bill, but also like after he got elected, like a year ago, he was saying like, we're not going to do this.
He fired people who had been hired to work at the White House, and then they were asked on their questionnaires, do you smoke weed? And they were like,
I forgot about
right.
that. That was one of the first stories.
How mad would you be if you were that person right now?
One of them like retweeted like, do I get my job back?
Can I work at the White House again?
I mean, at least
No, criminal.
It's the... Can I have my job back? It's that guy.
I mean, it does.
You could have your job back if you smoked that weed in a national park. If you did it at the Washington Monument, you are allowed to come back.
It does. There are a lot of people, or I mean, some people who had previously. It's on their record, and so that this gets expunged. So I guess it's good for them. But
it's still
like,
an important step.
It's nice, yeah, but what you're saying is like it looks like you see the headline and it's like, well, Biden, Dark Brandon, but it's this model of like Obama. I feel like there are 2 models for Democratic presidents in the modern era. You're either like Bill Clinton, where you just take Republican bills and make them slightly less bad, and then take credit for like doing well, cutting people off welfare. Or you do the Obama-Biden model, which is to take like a progressive thing, like giving people health care, and make it look really good. But then when you look at the details...
Not do it.
Yeah, it just like moves shit around and maybe helps some people, but also just makes everything a more confusing mess.
Yeah, the Obama-Biden method is like the taking really selective pictures on your dating app profile type thing, or like... the way that the food looks on the menu versus when you get it kind of shit.
They're calling it federal duck face. Do you think state legislatures are going to follow suit on this? Because this is the one thing he keeps doing is like, while I'm not specifically pardoning anyone, I encourage state governments to pardon them.
Well, what does that mean?
Like, remember when he was complaining about the gas price hikes and he was like, while I'm not going to nationalize energy companies, I think they should consider not charging so much. And it's like, this is not politics. You think you're a company's dad right now. It's very strange.
Yeah, you're the most powerful person in the world and you're just like suggesting things. I mean, certainly no Republican governors are going to do anything with this, right? Like I was thinking like, oh, cool. I'm from Texas. Oh, Greg Abbott, fucking bullshit. I mean, maybe if Beto wins, but I don't think he's going to win.
He's going to start burning drug offenders as if they are weed to make a point.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like one of the great kind of inconsistencies or whatever with between the Republicans and the Democrats or whatever.
That's what they're called.
That like with the abortion, with like overturning Roe versus Wade, Republican like state governments have these like bills that were already like set up to, you know, to be triggered by that, and like everything just gets knocked over domino style as soon as some shit happens. But like there's no that doesn't exist for marijuana legalization, right? There's not like a fucking a bunch of those weird trap card things set in place to like the governor of fucking whatever, Vermont or some shit isn't like, finally we get to legalize weed. None of them want to do this in the first place, right?
Well, I think California, like, but I don't know what's going to happen because I think you have to take away the federal law because up until recently, I know this has been happening up until recently. I don't know how much it still happens, but like there will be like the state will say this is legal, and then the DA, the federal Justice Department, will still like raid facilities with marijuana and stuff. It's like this gray area that they don't know how to sort out. I don't know if Biden is even going to fully go ahead with codifying the law as marijuana is completely legal for recreational purposes, if he's even going to deschedule it. We just don't know.
I mean, if it's anything like his environmental or debt relief orders, he's just going to receive some pushback and then not actually do it.
To that point about the like federal versus state shit in like Colorado, where people like first started becoming actual business tycoons legally on the state level.
I'm a legal tycoon.
Well, this really crazy shit happened where like they figured out that they weren't allowed to deposit any of the money in a bank because then the federal government could come after it.
This is purely mattress money.
People would have like these compounds with like stacks of like Breaking Bad style like dollar bills, and then they would get broken into by like other, you know, drug cartel people and like people with commando gear. And
I hear there's a money factory down the street.
It's like such a dumb situation.
I do think that's the final form of America, is just like empty buildings full of dollar bills with like full SWAT teams battling out inside of them.
It's the fucking franchise thing we talked about last week with was it Popeyes or whatever, where the like people were pissed off.
Oh yeah,
that
it was Popeyes.
The franchise
right.
wasn't obeying the national level
federalism. Yeah,
yeah.
What we're talking about is federalism, folks. I am owed a freaking biscuit for my chicken sandwich. I don't care what it says on the board. It's only right they give me one. I know it's been a week. I still want it.
I could have given you my biscuit.
I don't want your biscuit. I want my rights as an individual respected and to be delivered the biscuit that I received with the meal I purchased.
Maybe they're looking out for you because that's a ton of carbs.
It costs like 6 cents to make a biscuit.
I always get sick of the biscuit by the time I'm finished eating it. So I considered like, you know, almost leaning over going, hey, what if I cut my biscuit in half and then Anders cuts his biscuit in half? We just give
That's a full biscuit.
It's the principle.
We could even
understand.
Cut it horizontally so you wouldn't even notice.
We've just discussed I'm dying of biscuit disease and shouldn't be eating any of these things, but I can't help myself. I demand my rights.
Yeah.
Well, if you are somehow arrested for smoking weed at the grave of the unknown soldier, congratulations.
That's a federal offense. So in DC, I guess this affects people in DC, kind of.
Yeah, just encouraging crimes. This is what he's doing out there.
I do actually wonder if it's going to be continuous and if he's just going to like, well, that was just for people who did it previously. From now on, we're just going right back.
Right, because it's a pardon. It's just a one-time thing. So it doesn't really affect anyone because, like, if your life has been ruined for the last, like, 20 years by the drug war, you get one thing expunged. You're like, thanks, I live in a gutter because of this. I can't get a fuck.
And I know I already said this, but it is a pardon for 0 people. The October surprise is a special pardon for no one.
Well, 0 people are getting out of prison, right? But like, you can have like
you can
your,
go get a job or something now.
I guess if you have, but then it's like no one has just possession on their record.
All those people work at Dave's Killer Bread now, anyways. Fine.
Yeah.
Don't email me about this.
Fucking Brandon, man. What a goddamn it!
You gotta respect him. He delivers.
This is
on his
becoming
brand.
like a we're gonna remember his presidency like this. Remember how he faked us out every week?
Old gotcha Brandon.
It's like a fucking deadbeat dad that came home with like a fake Nintendo 64 for you every fucking week.
Just 2 Sega Genesis taped together. Why would you do this? It's more expensive than if you just got an N64.
No, he's dumb and he got duped at the flea market. And it's like actually one of those fucking things that plugs USB style into your TV and there's like 3 games on it.
Oh,
he's like,
yeah.
it's a PS5.
Yeah.
This is what you wanted, right?
Look at Pong. Blop, blop, blop. That's what Pong sounds like.
Yeah, I remember video games.
Hey, I'm Chris Pratt, and I'm playing Pong.
I'm the voice of Pong.
Do you think he's ever played a video game, Joe Biden?
Joe Biden, no.
Absolutely not. He would not know. He'd be one of those guys that holds the controller.
I was about to say, I would love the press outing he's doing to like get the youth vote, and he's holding the Xbox sideways or whatever. Like, touchdown. Points me. Is this what you wanted? I don't know where I am. He's being chased by the ghosts from Pac-Man. He's always looking off camera at something you can't see. He's just like, they're trying to munch me. All right. It's about time to get to this interview. Andrew, set that up. Set it up,
okay.
knock it down.
Yes, this happens every couple of years where we are a political podcast, but we usually try to not interview politicians because it will be bad for them.
Right.
Generally.
Which, except for this one. This is the exception.
Yeah, it's a person running for Congress from the great state of Kentucky. Who reached out to us because apparently he's a fan of the show.
And he listens to our show.
Apparently.
So he knows about like Smoothie Turd and stuff.
We did not ask him about Schmovie. I felt like he was smarter than me, and I didn't want to embarrass myself.
That's the name of his Republican opponent.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, my goodness.
Well, he's going to lose then because everybody loves Smoothie Turd.
Yeah.
Goddamn, one hell of a lady.
So, yeah, he's running for Congress in Kentucky and is running in a deep, deep red district, but is putting up a fight. And we also made sure to talk to him about a lot of important local, especially environmental issues that are happening down there. So without further ado, let's go to the tape. We are now joined by Conor Halbleib, who is running for Congress in Kentucky's 5th congressional district. Conor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And I want to start with a question. We don't interview political candidates very often, but when we do, I always like to ask them this toughie, which is, why are you running for office?
Well, I'm running for a couple reasons. I think, one is that it's something that I've always been interested and passionate about. I've always been into politics, and it's just something that I've always enjoyed and felt that I could do well at. 2 is that I think I've got a great platform that could actually improve the lives of people. And 3, I had the opportunity to do so. I think for a lot of people, even if they feel that they can't, or if they feel like they've got great ideas, they may not feel at this point in their lives that they can, or, there's always a reason not to do it. But I was in a situation where I just finished law school and I didn't have I don't have kids. I'm not married yet. So there was an opportunity for me to put my ideas into practice. So I guess for all those reasons, I decided now was the time to run for office.
And you're running in a district that has been held by a Republican for quite a long time. What can you tell us about the incumbent, and what are some of the major differences you and he have?
So my opponent's name is Harold Hal Rogers. He's been in office for a very long time. He's been in office since 1981. And he is 84 years old currently. So there's over a 50-year age gap between me and him. And we can talk a little bit about him if you want. He has a certain level of control over the area, and he's done a very good job over the years of maintaining that control. Although things, I believe, are starting to slip away from him.
So the race is an 85-year-old incumbent versus this is your first race?
Yes.
Okay,
and I just turned 30. Yeah.
Nice. This is exciting. Okay.
Yeah, some fresh blood in southeastern Kentucky, which I wanted to ask you about the region. a big part of your campaign is the environment, specifically clean water, which has been a very big issue in your neck of the woods. What can you tell us about the situation there with water and what you think should be done to fix it?
Right. So, like you said, this has been a big issue, and actually, surprisingly, clean water has become an issue nationally in some other parts of the country, including places like Jackson, Mississippi. So, it's actually getting a little more attention than I would have expected when I first started my campaign. In places in my district, including the biggest one is Martin County, Kentucky. There was a coal sludge and slurry spill that occurred in the year 2000. We can point to the exact date where a slurry spill that was bigger than the Exxon Valdez spill occurred. And, 22 years later, people in Martin County still don't drink the tap water because it comes out brown or comes out with a distinct smell. And, they cannot trust the water that comes out of their tap. And I chose this as kind of a big issue that I run on because, I think it doesn't matter if you're Republican or Democrat, if you're progressive, liberal, centrist, or right wing. It's, every family wants to be able to have the water that comes out of their tap clean and being able to drink and bathe with it. So it's been a hugely important issue, and one that I believe that the current representative hasn't succeeded in fixing.
And what is sort of their response to it? Not only Rogers, but sort of the political establishment in the state as a whole. How do they respond to the water crisis? Do they have any way of addressing it at all?
Well, water's a difficult, for a lot of times, water's a difficult issue to pin down a politician on because, we don't really know as ordinary constituents who's in control of our water. Should it be the local government, the state government? I believe the federal government should play a big role. A lot of the impact, health impacts don't show up till years later in terms of, cancer rates and things like that. So that's kind of the big thing, is that everyone just pushes it off to someone else. You really don't know, who's right to blame. The other thing that happens with situations like this is it gets very pricey because the system in the counties, or the water systems, are not designed for the amount of people or they're older systems, and so people in Martin County actually spend more on their water than almost any other place in Kentucky, regardless of how bad their water system is. And the only way that the government really has to, quote unquote, solve this issue is to turn to privatization. They say if we privatize this system, it'll be better for you, it'll be cheaper. And as kind of you all probably realize as well, privatizing big systems like water and utilities isn't necessarily the best way to go. But that's the only solution that politicians today seem to have to deal with these issues.
Right. I've certainly heard that story before about privatization usually does not go well, at least for the people drinking the water. Goes very well for the companies. Mm-hmm. But you said you wanted more federal involvement. What would that entail? Is there a role for perhaps public ownership too, of like local control of these systems as well?
Absolutely. So I think federal responsibility really can show itself immediately after some sort of environmental impact. Like I said, there's a specific event that occurred in the year 2000. A place like Martin County is not going to have the resources to deal with a massive environmental catastrophe like that. So it's incumbent on the federal government to bring as much money and resources into the areas to, quote unquote, stop the bleeding. And then it's up to us as a Commonwealth, as Kentuckians, to take control over that system to maintain the day-to-day operation of it. So I think the best way to do it, again, is to have local control by the people. And then in cases of emergencies where huge financial, outlays are needed, that's the job that the federal government can do, that state governments and local governments, which are already cash strapped, can't handle emergencies like that. So it's a combination of those two things can solve a lot of these issues.
Yeah, I remember one solution is community land trusts, or a trust fund for water supplies, trying to repair them. So that's certainly good to hear that you have a plan of attack there. Another question, environmentally related, is coal. Is your area in particular, is the coal industry a major player there? And how do you feel about a transition away from coal to cleaner technologies?
Coal is absolutely a major player in the region. It is what you think of when you think of kind of stereotypical Kentucky coal miners. That's this area. So it plays both a major part economically, but even more so, a major part politically. So even though coal companies don't hire as many workers now as they used to, with the profits and everything else still growing, they have huge political influence. So I say right off the bat that I'm for a Green New Deal. Now, how a Green New Deal would look in a place like Kentucky may be different than a place in California or a place in Nebraska or anywhere else. We still in Kentucky get 90% of our electricity comes from coal. So it's just a more difficult kind of longer term task of transitioning to renewable energies or even nuclear energy, which I'm actually for. You just have to be honest with people and say, hey, I'm for the Green New Deal. I mean, people in Kentucky know, even those who support coal, they know that it's not a long-term viable solution. So you just have to attack that subject head on and say, hey, the way we implement something like the Green New Deal in Kentucky is just going to be a little more complex and take probably a little bit longer than some other places. And people seem to be, even people who aren't, Democrats or anything like that, they understand that. And that's how I approach that.
Right. And I'm curious how this message is received by industry workers, because there's kind of a trope that, like, the second you mention any kind of transition, they're going to close off their ears and tell you to get out. But one thing I've heard is that the feelings are a lot more mixed among coal workers than we might think about a transition. What has your experience been talking directly to people who work in coal now about a transition?
I think the thing is, like you said, it's complex, and for a lot of people, coal is not just a way to make good money, which it is in certain cases, but it also brings a sense of pride and a sense of to a community and a sense of people needing you, and people take a lot of pride in that. So the way you do it is you basically say, hey, we need to transition away from this. However, we are going to combine that with offering you not just some sort of token, minimum wage job or something, but say we're going to put some real money and real investment into this community or into this area. You combine both of those things together, and people can see it. And that also means, as someone, if I was to be elected into Congress, there's access to kind of a lot of money for a lot of different different projects to help communities get on their feet. But you also need to kind of take away the return on investment aspect of things. Sometimes, a place like Eastern Kentucky, if we transition away from coal and, towards something else, we're going to have to put a lot of money into the area without actually expecting a lot of financial return right off the bat. And so I say, hey, a transition from coal is included with things like infrastructure to the area, with things like I talk about, free college. I talk about, taking away all student debt, taking away all medical debt, Medicare for all. If you combine all those things together, then the kind of sting of the threat of losing a coal job doesn't really hit as hard.
So we've been talking a lot about water this interview, and you know what else is a form of water? Is a massive destructive flood.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Kentucky's had some experience with that so far this year, and I'm wondering, has the impact from that affected maybe the average voter's response to environmental reform or what have you? But on the ground, what's your take of it?
I think so. The flooding happened in kind of very late July, going into August, and it was a natural, a natural disaster like anything else. But people also saw that the impact of the flooding was exacerbated by policies that had occurred just to appease the coal industry. So, for example, this flooding wasn't just, I like to call it like a passive flooding, where you start seeing water leak into your basement and you've got time to be like, hey, I probably need to get out and, take some stuff with me. This was an aggressive flood that came very, very quickly, much faster than, and at night, much faster than people could, safely remove themselves from their houses. And that was due in part to coal silt pond deposits that occurred on the top of the mountains, where mountaintop removal and things like that had took place. So those silt deposits trapped all that water up there on top of the mountains until it basically the sandbag fell over and it all fell down at once. And people see that, and that that this wasn't just a natural disaster.
Right. And so like that is the feeling you're getting on the ground there is maybe a lot of anger about that, because I don't know the specific statistics, but it is currently a Republican district, and I'm wondering if maybe this is going to have a big playoff during the race, in your opinion, or if in general this is shaking up the game at all.
Well, it definitely, it definitely brought a sense of anger and a sense of, who's responsible, for this and how are we going to fix this? Because one of the big issues now is long-term housing. So the federal government came in right after the flood and set up some kind of non-permanent temporary housing for people. But like I said, with the aggressiveness of the flood, it took a lot of people's houses off the foundation. And so there's going to be some real impact of, people, there's going to be a lot of people who are not in their normal houses come November. And people have been talking about that, and it's kind of the big issue in the area every time I talk to people. So it definitely is getting into people's minds that that the person who may be in charge for 40 plus years and has the highway named after him that runs through the area may not have the best answers to solve problems today. Right.
If the buck had to stop somewhere, it would probably be at someone who's been in local control for 40 years.
Yeah, if you want to, he is very good at saying that all good things that come into the area are because of him. If any sort of money comes to the area, he puts his name on the receipt and says, look how many millions I brought to you. But that also means if you want that level of control, that, like you said, if something like this happens, the buck stops with you. You should be. He was in office 20 years by the time that the Martin County incident happened, and it's been over 20 years since then. I'd like to say if I was in office anywhere for 20 years, I would have cashed in every political favor I ever had to make sure that the people of my district had access to clean water. And I think this flooding is another example of that, you have all this power, let's see you utilize it and actually fix our problems.
And the one federal agency that's supposed to deal with this stuff, FEMA, what has their response been? Has it been anywhere near adequate?
I don't think any response has been near adequate. They have been in the area, and President Biden did visit the area. And like I said, FEMA has been, their presence has been known, and they have put up some temporary housing, which I think is good. And I think we should do more of that. And I don't fault them for that. But, this is one of those things where they'll only be around as long as there's attention to it. And the long-term effects are going to last a lot longer than the attention might last in this area. So even then they put up some temporary housing, and they've actually fixed some water pipes that were destroyed in the flooding. It's nowhere near adequate, and it's just hard to do that.
Well, I also want to ask about the Democratic Party in Kentucky, because for a long time, the playbook there has kind of been, it seems from an outsider's perspective, kind of the same as it's been everywhere, as you run as far to the right as possible and try to meet Republicans in the middle. Amy McGrath is a great example of that, somebody whose campaign went down in flames and was raising money to the bitter end. But you're staking out a different approach, and it's not just you. There's also the Senate nominee on the Democratic side, Charles Booker, is running a more progressive type of race. And one of your, I guess, fellow nominees, Jeff Young, who's dyed-in-the-wool Marxist-Leninist, who's also running for Congress in Kentucky. What's going on there with the Democratic Party? Is there a tension boiling over between progressives or leftists and moderates and liberals, or what's sort of happening in that with that dynamic?
Well, Kentucky is one of these southern states that had a historically, like you said, very conservative Democratic Party, and a Democratic Party that got a lot of people elected for a very long time. Actually, this year, one of the big stories within the state of Kentucky is, for the first time ever, there are more registered Republicans than there are Democrats. So that has kind of put some fear into the Democratic Party in the state. As far as kind of the difference between, candidates such as myself and Charles Booker, and then the more mainstream, even conservative Democrats, I talk to them a lot, and a lot of them are very nice, but there is a sense that they don't really understand if the Democratic Party wants to succeed, where it needs to go. I just naturally am a progressive, very strong progressive, and a very left leaning Democrat. But even if I wasn't, if I tried to run as a centrist Democrat, and right now in the state, with the Republican Party being so, in one way effective, and another way very strong in their positions, if I ever tried to run like a diet Republican, why would anyone ever vote for me when they could get the real thing? So I don't think it makes sense politically. And like you said, there's a bubbling up of some real progressive and very left leaning ideas coming from both the people on the ground and the some people in the party itself, and some people have decided to run, which is another reason why I decided to run now, is that I saw that there was, ever since Bernie Sanders destroyed Hillary Clinton in the 2016 primary in the state, even though the state's primary was so late, it really didn't matter. So there's something here, and it's just how do you harness that energy? But there definitely is kind of a little bit of a split between some of the candidates and the establishment party.
Yeah, and one thing that gets forgotten, especially in Kentucky, is there's this history of labor radicalism. Harlan County, USA, not only great documentary, but a great sort of incredible story. I actually remember when Rand Paul was first running for office in 2010, they asked him about that. Hey, we're going through Harlan County, Harlan County, USA. And he's like, huh? What's that? So a lot of this stuff has been sort of suppressed, it seems, or forgotten. Are you trying to tap into that about Kentucky's sort of radical past? And I also want to ask you, we've talked a lot about, local issues to Kentucky, but how do you see your foreign policy as a candidate for federal Congress?
Right. So the first thing you said about, I think Harlan County, USA it's a great documentary, and people do take a lot of pride in that. And I think a documentary like that can show maybe some people that kind of labor issues, which I consider myself a staunch defender of labor rights. It's part of my platform and what I really fight for. Those may not necessarily correlate with the kind of cultural, more liberal understanding of how, what liberalism or being on the left or whatever you want to call it is in like San Francisco. So, you can have someone who drives a pickup truck or something and still be, and maybe not be woke, but you still want to fight for them. And through labor is a really good opportunity to reach people who you didn't think you could necessarily reach. So yes, that's a huge part of it. And again, people take a lot of pride in that. And in Eastern Kentucky, especially, there is that history of labor and organizing, and you need to tap into that in order to connect with the communities. As far as my foreign policy, I keep it very simple. I say that, especially like, let's say for the Russia-Ukraine, war that's going on right now, I say it doesn't really matter what your, position is on a very kind of messy issue like that. It's not to be pro-Russia or pro-Ukraine, but what is going to be your position on the, millions of people who will be displaced from that war? And I say everyone should say, they should be receiving refugee status, and we should be welcoming in people like that, no matter what. The United States has a very long and, like, as you all know, very dark history when it comes to foreign policy. I think probably the easiest thing to do from a foreign policy perspective is to say, we are here to welcome people who are disrupted from conflicts happening all over the world, and that's kind of where I place my foreign policy. I think that's the right thing to do. So
you would say we need a little less of maybe much less of a hand in world affairs, the United States.
Right. And the only issue that I have with some people who are on the left, or who claim to be on the left, is, again, I think the biggest thing to do is you can't be an isolationist. You can't say that we are not part of this global economy, or we're not part of a global world, which also means that we need to accept people who are fleeing from disaster areas. Sometimes I see people who try to act like we can be an isolationist, so we can block ourselves off from the rest of the world. We're a part of the rest of the world, but I do not believe that we should be meddling in other people's affairs. It's kind of how do you draw that line?
Right. Well, last question. How do you like your odds?
Well, my odds are my odds. It's a R plus 33 district, I think, last time I saw. But again, this guy is there's some benefits in running a race like this. meaning I can do whatever I want. I can try out things that other campaigns can't really do it if it's more of a 50-50 race. I can experiment with different strategies and tactics and talk to people the way I want to. But like I said, he's not going to be around for much longer. He's 84 now, 84, 85, and he does not have any sort of successor in the wings. So he's not going to be there much longer, and I will run this race as hard as I can. And I'm trying to win, but if for some reason I did not win this time, I'll be running again, and I'll keep pushing that because, like I said, he won't be around that much longer. And I believe that there are benefits in running. There are two national parties in this country. There's the Democratic Party and Republican Party. If we're going to be a part of a national party, and if I believe in electoral politics, which I do, I'm running for electoral position. We need to run people in every district that we possibly can. Have people see the Democratic Party as a winning party, or have them see that there's an option wherever they live in this country. So there are a lot of benefits to doing it. And like I said, I'm running to win this race and do whatever I can. And I will continue to fight for the people of Eastern Kentucky, even after November 8th, regardless of the final outcome.
All right. Well, Conor Halbleib, where can people find you?
So you can find me on my website. It's Conor, CONOR, 4, Kentucky.com. And I'm also very active on Facebook, and probably most active on Twitter at Conor_Halbleib. You can find all my information on my website, Twitter, and Facebook.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and good luck.
Thank you. Thanks.
Yeah, man. A flood. It destroyed everything. So good luck to him.
Vote Conor.
Go get out there and vote your ass off for Conor Halbleib.
That would be cool.
Halbleib. Yeah.
It was a quiet L.
It feels every time you say it, it feels like you're to say Conor Habib because he's a very similar name.
Off mic, we did discuss how he was Wario Conor Habib. I didn't want to say it on the show because of all of our Mario discussion so far.
I hope he wins, and then there's someone in, what is he running for, Senate?
Congress.
There's somebody in Congress that listens to our podcast. That'll be weird.
More and more. We're slowly taking over the United States.
I guess there's people in Congress that believe in QAnon and shit, though, so it won't be that weird.
Don't take this away from me.
There's people in Congress that listen to worse podcasts already, I think we could safely say.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone who listens to true crime.
Yeah. True.
Yeah. Those people, they're animals. They're disgracing the victims of horrible murders.
I take
a stand against it.
I hear Jerry Nadler listens to the Try Guys. So.
Is Try Guys a podcast? What is it?
I think it's one of those things that's a bunch of shit. There is one part of lifestyle that is a podcast. And I know this because you can't avoid this story that's been going around.
I'm trying really hard.
and
it keeps showing up.
I read an anecdote from it that the really intense, fashionable Asian guy on it hates doing the podcast. So he's often not on it because he just hates podcasting.
You got to respect that.
Yeah. But I think that means that they also do other shit like videos and stuff.
I guess if you were really into fashion, you would probably want to be on video every chance you get.
Yeah, I suppose so. And if you're not, you love podcasting like us.
Yeah, I don't want anybody to see me. Right. My shirts are always not matching my shoes.
Anyway, let's not get into that stupid fucking story.
No, we will never discuss the Try Guys.
Wait, hold on. There's one thing about it that's really funny.
We just said.
Sorry, I forgot. There's one that's too good. One of them said that they interviewed him about how how they've been doing since they fired their friend for being infidelis or whatever the fuck.
Breaking his covenant with God.
Yeah. And he said it's been affecting his bowel movements. What? So he's like... I think he was trying to say, I've been sick to my stomach, but he said it like that, which means,
He was trying to be funny. He was like, even my BMs have been hard. And it was like, what's up?
You're taking gross shits because your friend cheated on his wife? That's weird, man.
Your organs are in rebellion from this?
That shouldn't affect that part of your life at all.
Is this what, American cultures could be like now? Just, intense moral scolding to the state of, physical unrest?
Yeah, you know I mean? Roe versus Wade's overturned. Everyone's fucking Catholic. We're, executing our friends for breaking things that aren't even laws. They're just in the Bible and shit. Anders, if you covet my fucking wife one more time.
I mean, you wouldn't have to do anything. I would just be dead if I cheated on my girlfriend.
Oh, yeah.
No, but then you just covet her, though.
Right.
My wife, that
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
exist.
If I think about her.
Or if you become jealous, I swear to God, we're having a podcast meeting.
If you covet one of Jake's possessions, his house or his spouse, so you could also covet his sweet
What about his
apartment.
mouse?
If I see you looking at Murray, like you wish...
Like you wish you had Murray.
Yeah.
You can count on that not being the case.
Oh, that's true.
All right, because Anders has a deep fear of black cats, and that is chronicled on the show. Well, we got very distracted. Do you want to talk about this other thing before we close out here?
Sure. Yeah, we were talking Washington, D.C., where you can now sometimes smoke weed in very tightly regulated environments. And where Connor may be going to torch one up as a member of Congress.
Yeah, that's one of the new rituals when when you get elected now.
They call it a joint session.
They make you do a beer bong on the Capitol steps.
Yeah. Biden comes and smokes you out, hot boxes the room with you.
Oh, man.
But there is a chef in D.C. It was a big deal. I don't think I knew about him before I lived in D.C. His name is somewhat similar to mine. His last name, anyway, is Andres, Jose Andres, who is sort of a knockoff. I would call him a knockoff Anthony Bourdain, because there can really only be one. You know, we've got a lot of like tattooed chefs out there, like guys are into like punk rock.
Yeah.
But they also cook at a restaurant.
There are a million
there's
celebrity
a lot of
chefs.
those
So this is
guys.
a
Yeah.
hard stance to uphold.
Right, but there's only one who I think is like the OG. I don't even know if he was inked. Bourdain. I think he had some
Bourdain.
tats.
Yeah,
but
he was inked.
I don't think Jose is, but
He
he's
was
like
gang affiliated.
He did heroin. If he did heroin without having tattoos, that's a weird move.
yeah. But Jose
I only
Andres,
like needles for one thing.
Jose Andres is trying, and I would say failing, to live up to the legacy of Bourdain, and is like a globetrotter and tries to do all this like NGO shit. He's like organizes meals in disaster areas. He got $100 million from Bezos and gave it just to the Ukraine crisis. But he owns a ton of restaurants, and they all have his name attached to them. There's like Minibar by Jose Andres.
Oh, yeah.
The Bazaar by Jose Andres. Bazaar Meat by Jose Andres.
Bizarre meat.
I've always wanted to eat bizarre meat.
Yeah, that's what was Dahmer was cooking up. But there's one.
Hello.
By Dahmer.
There's one that's just called E with a tilde. I don't know how that's pronounced.
What
Eh.
the fuck?
Is that eh?
If it's with the tilde, it's
Is it a tilde or is it an accent mark?
It's you tell me.
acento.
That's an accent mark.
Accent mark. Okay. Oh, the tilde is with a squiggle. That's
Yeah.
right. Sorry. How was that said?
Eh? You just-
Oh,
just
so
called
it
A.
was A this whole time.
But he is like a big, well-known guy in the DC area. But he, like right now, there is an effort which has been ongoing for a few years now to raise the minimum wage for tipped servers. Because, like in a lot of cities, if you are a bartender or a server or someone who gets tips as part of your earnings, you are allowed to not be paid the minimum wage. You get like sometimes $4, $3, $2 an hour.
Yeah.
I used to get, I think, $6 in New York.
Nice.
Like $2.75 in some places.
Yeah. And that's your base pay because they justified by like, well, you're getting so much in tips, which sometimes is true, but
Should absolutely be an illegal arrangement.
Yeah.
Be like,
Insane.
well, you have no salary. I hope you do well today.
right.
Yeah, and it gets eaten up by taxes. Or there's like weird shit where it's like if you don't make enough money to make it back up to minimum wage, they then like have to pay you it. But it's just like, man, just pay your fucking employees.
None of this makes
system.
any sense.
Right. You should not own a business. I mean, period. But
Not to
you should
sound
not own a
European,
business.
but there just shouldn't be tipping at all.
It's
We should
only
all just
good
get
if you
paid
have-
the correct amount.
It's literally only good if you have my job specifically.
Yes.
Because I can kind of cheat and make tons of extra money.
Jake is now Mr. Two Damn Dollar Bills because of this wrong, but
Yeah.
Jose Andres wants to put him in jail.
I mean, if you're under the table, you're under the table. You know, not that
You're
I know
probably-
too much about that. But,
You're probably blowing a guy down there.
but
Hello.
you should have the same base pay because tips are dependent on who and how many people come into your restaurant. If you get one asshole, then you're not going to eat that week, basically. And yeah, if you own a business, you should be prepared to pay people enough money to live off of, which is why it's just absurd that we keep having this conversation like, well, I'm going to have to cut into costs about my business. Like, well, you shouldn't have a business. If you can't afford to pay your employees, fuck right off. And Jose Andres obviously can afford this. He's a multimillionaire. And he is vehemently opposed to this initiative in D.C., which would just make the minimum wage standard for everybody. This was passed by referendum popularly in 2018 in D.C., and then it had to be kicked to the city council, and they just voted it down. They're just like, we're not going to do this because, they trotted out a couple like weird examples of people who said, oh, this wouldn't work for me. A lot of business owners, obviously.
I don't understand, though. If it's already passed by referendum, aren't they just in charge of
We do not
doing
actually
it then?
like live in a democracy, you know?
Yeah.
They can just not do shit.
It's a
Happens all the time.
vibe-based political system, and
Right.
the vibes were not with it.
But since that time, there has been...
It is not bussin'. No cap.
Since that time, the composition of the city council has changed, and it looks like it will... I mean, it has to go up for a vote again, a general election vote, and then it is going to be kicked back to the council again, and this council looks like it will pass it, barring anything unexpected. But Jose Andres is trying to say that this is a slippery slope. This is going to lead to, like, price inflation. And one of his restaurants, this is on thelevernews.com, they're like, he does humanitarian work, but the idea is so in favor of helping refugees and immigrants. There's a server at his restaurant. How can you be that pro-immigrant and be opposed to raising wages for the many immigrants that work for your company? Doesn't add up. So people are, he's like saying, yeah, let people in, open, I don't know if he's saying open borders, but he's like, we should be more compassionate about immigration.
Let them in so that I can exploit them in my restaurants.
Right. It makes sense to me. I would like more immigrants to come work at La Favelle or whatever hot spot I'm opening.
But yeah, this guy's running around. He's making documentaries. He's like opening restaurants in Dubai or whatever, but just refuses to pay his workers a living wage.
I have a cheese distillery. I'm trying to function with only Eastern Europeans who are fleeing their homes.
You always hear that argument from small, like, mom and pop businesses, and it just makes more sense when they say it. It's still bullshit. Like,
Right.
fuck you. You shouldn't own a restaurant.
Yeah.
But if you're opening restaurants in Dubai and you have a restaurant called, like, Seven with an umlaut on it, like, the fanciest part of town, like, fuck you. You have the money.
The world's one and only 7-themed restaurant.
Yeah.
From the movie about the 7 Deadly Sins.
Yeah, your food comes in a box.
What's in the box?
Yeah.
Here's the thing about the 7 restaurant. You never know what's in the box. So you go up front, you pay a flat fee, whatever comes in that box, you gotta eat it. It's made by immigrants.
It's made by immigrants. You're in the commercial. You gotta try it. It's made by immigrants.
They left their home.
Yeah, but I think I said my entire point. Never mind. I'm done.
Well, yeah. Only with one thing I want to add quickly is like this is also. I mean, there's dollars and cents aspect to it, but this is also a control thing because if you're a tipped worker, you have to. I mean, the saying the customer's always right. Obviously, we all think that's bullshit. But if you're relying on tips for your income, you have to pretend like you think that. You really do. Like because, I mean, you can only say fuck off to so many people before you're not getting enough money. Like people are tyrants, and if your livelihood depends on them being nice to you,
right.
You have to go out of your way to placate them for absolutely ridiculous things.
Not to mention, like even like that's just one layer of it. You're laboring under that, and then also the general like thing that applies when you work for anyone anywhere, which is that if they complain to your boss, you could just get fired. So you're like. It's a double thing.
You have to save and invest your rudeness capital.
Right. And Jose Andres does not want his tip workers, to be able to know that they have that solid base pay.
Yeah.
Right? That's what he's really worried about. He wants fucking indentured servants running around feeling like they're the serfs of him and his customers.
This is a tricky issue because, like, when you work for tips, often it's easy to convince, like, people who work for tips not to support this sort of thing because every once in a while someone does have the good shifts where they, you know, end up making bank and you get paid in cash, so it feels like a lot more money than it is. And, like, you know, it's just capitalism, just by design. If you're the one making all the fat stacks on Saturday night or whatever, you kind of look at this and go, well, this would hurt me. And it's like, there's ways around that, though. You could pay people more on the busy shifts and stuff like that out of the boss's pocket, you know?
Yeah.
This sort of stuff is also really funny to me because, like, they raised the minimum wage, I think, in Seattle or something like that years ago, and it was, like, fine, but they managed to fabricate all these stories that they feed to, like, libertarians and stuff, and there's just all these, like, fat guys on the internet that, like, when this stuff comes up, they get very catastrophic and say, like, man, all my favorite restaurants got shut down, you know, it's communism coming to America, and it's just always, like, a spaghetti restaurant, and they're, like, you know, putting their flag at half-mast and shedding a tear because, like, the cheese stick factory got shut down or whatever.
First they came for Applebee's, and I said nothing, even though I fucking love Applebee's.
Yeah. But A, it doesn't happen, and B, if it does, yeah, they couldn't afford to fucking stay open. Fuck them. A better restaurant will come along that'll pay its workers better.
Fuck them. That's it. We're out of time because everybody's going to work. So let's plug. Starting with Anders Lee. Anders, what do you got up the pipe?
At Anders Lee on Twitter. Check out my Substack, in which I have like a part one of a counterfactual about the Brest-Litovsk agreement, if it didn't happen. Part one. I got part one, which is the bad possibilities, and then I'm going to have part two, which is a little more fun, dropping quite soon. Also, check out our Patreon. We got a lot of fun, interesting eps there, including one about the anti-World War II movement, which I think is a very fun sort of look into American history.
Yeah, fun episode. Patreon.com/PodDamnAmerica. You can find me on Twitter.com at Patak Test Kitchen. That's PTAK Test Kitchen. And come to my next comedy show, October 22nd at Caveat at 7, Game Boys. I fucked up and overbooked the lineup, so it's too good, and now I need all of you to come. So go to that. I'm going to put the ticket link in the description. I also have a new podcast where I read Quoras with Jeremy Kaplowitz. That's called Quora Raiders. I have to tell you about it. It just launched. Okay, Jake.
Listen to my other podcast, Why You Mad, at Feral Jokes on everything. We have merch for sale at poddamnamerica.bigcartel.com if you want a shirt or something or a poster. I'm having a Pokrov feast at my apartment on the 14th of October, which, if you correctly follow the Julian calendar, which you should if you are a proper medieval Catholic like myself, you know that Pokrov is on the 14th and not the 1st, which would be if you follow the Gregorian calendar like modern people. But, you know, I'm unlike some people, I actually believe in our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Wait.
Thank you.
That's Catholicism, right? Yeah.
Yes, that's Jesus Christ is Catholicism.
Oh, he's hella in there. Yeah, I was thinking about Judaism. Okay. No, I'm serious. I love God and the Lord, and it's very Pokrov is important to me. I'll be making a bunch of pierogies or something.
We all love the Lord here, and that's what this whole show is about.
That is why we changed the word God to pod.
And that's what we say. And every at the end of every episode, we also say, "It is finished."
It is finished.